Furthermore, this is the first time in history when children are an authority about something really important. Think about that one. When I was 11, I was an authority on model trains. Today, the 11-year-old at the breakfast table is an authority on this digital revolution that's changing business, commerce, government, learning, media, publishing, every institution in society. In the 60s, we had a generation gap. Big differences between kids and parents over values and so on. Doesn't exist. Kids and parents get along really well today. Look at your iPod and your kid's iPod. There's overlap. I mean, my parents didn't even like the Beatles, let alone the Doors. What we have today is what I called a generation lap, where kids are lapping their parents on the info track. And if you got a teenager in your house, you know what I'm talking about. Who does the systems administration in your home? So this is humbling. I was chairing a panel. It's a big conference called the World Congress on IT. And on the left there, Rahaf Harfouch, she was 20 at the time, Canadian, studying in Paris. Her boyfriend's in Toronto. They turn on video Skype all day long to keep their relationship going. They cook together across the Atlantic Ocean and stuff. And so I said to her, Rahaf, your generation, do you use email? And she said, oh, no, Mr. Tapscott, that's yesterday's technology, email. And I said, well, if you did use email, what would you use it for? She says, email is sort of a great technology for, say, sending a thank you letter to one of your friend's parents. That would be a good use of email. I said to her, aren't you part of the dumbest generation? There's a book of that title. The subtitle is How the Digital Age Stupefies Young Americans and Jeopardizes Our Future. Aren't you ignorant? I said, I bet you don't watch the TV news. You probably don't read the newspaper. You probably get your news from Jon Stewart and The Daily Show. And she said, well, I don't think that's a fair stereotype. I think I'm informed, and so are most of my friends, but you're right. I don't read the newspaper. And then she says, putting it back to me, she says, but Mr. Tapscott, the newspaper, have you ever seen one of those things? They come out once a day. And they don't have hot links, they're not multimedia, and you get this weird black stuff on your fingers. She said, let me tell you how I get informed. It's called an RSS feed. I get 60 of them. Now, this is before Twitter. This is 2006. And she said, I have 60 of them. And I like to triangulate the news to sort of form my own opinion. She says, you're right, I don't watch the evening news, but does anybody? You know, more so in Canada, but in the United States, Sam Donaldson told me the average age of the ABC Nightly News watcher is 65. She says, and you're right, I watch The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, but not to get the news. I don't think The Daily Show would be funny unless you know the news. Beside her, Alison Featherston Hoff, 15 years old. Her dad is the CEO of Ogilvy One. He pays her $25 a month to have her track her time. She has kids doing this around the world now. It's called the Allison Diaries, how they interact with media. The reason he did that is he found that these kids were time shifting and cutting out the ads on television. And if you're the head of an ad agency, that's like the scariest thing you've ever seen. Beside her is Sherry Kong, 20-year-old student in New Zealand, hired with 80 other students. Their job? To teach the teachers how to use the internet in the classroom. I asked her, so Sherry, what are the teachers like as students? She says, well, Mr. Tapscott, they're awful. They talk in class, they don't do their homework. And beside her is Michael Furtick. He's the granddaddy of them all. He's like 26 at the time. I've known Michael since he was 13, when he was the project manager on my website, growingupdigital.com. They made him the project manager as a 13-year-old because he was the oldest and most experienced. When Michael was 15, he sold his own site for an undisclosed 7 or 8 figure US dollar sum. The Globe said that he probably only got $1 million. And I sent him an email. I said, Michael, you got $1 million. You should have called me. And he wrote back and he said, Don, legally, I can't tell you how much I got, but I can tell you I'm very happy. And he didn't want the money to buy a Ferrari, although he bought a cheap little car, but his mom had to drive around with him because he only had his learner's permit. He wanted the money to invest in his next new venture. It's called takingitglobal.org. 4 million young people on a network of kids who want to change the world. So just take something like the news. They don't read newspapers, news magazines, watch TV. fairly well informed, but they get their commodity news on the internet. They don't access news serially, even when online. They have good skills at authentication. They seek and self-organize communities. They want to remix and be part of content. They want to be part of a community. They view IP differently, and we'll come back to that. They will pay for some experiences and services. And they search for value through these 8 norms. I see I'm running a little behind here, so I'm going to pick this up, and we can talk informally afterwards if you want. But if you're designing a media company, these are the 8 norms of this generation. We interviewed 11,000 kids in 10 countries, the first ever global generation. They want choice. It's like oxygen. They want to customize things. I never got to customize the Mickey Mouse Club. They're a generation of scrutinizers. I look at Vogue and I see a model. My daughter sees a Photoshop job. Ooh, her neck is longer. It's a generation with very strong values, and they have integrity. Youth crime is down year over year for 15 years. The percent of kids that are clean in high school that don't do drugs or alcohol is up year over year for 15 years. Oh, they don't give a damn. They're an army of narcissists. Well, data doesn't support any of that. Youth volunteering in Canada has been up year over year for 15 years, and it's at an all-time high. It's a generation that wants to have fun, a generation of innovators, and they want things to happen quickly. So you put those two together, a technology revolution with a demographic revolution, you get a social revolution. I could show you 50 charts, and I won't, but they all show the old HTML website being eclipsed by the XML-based community. The old one thought the internet is about content. The new one understands it's about creating a context. The old one said we're a content provider. The new one said we're a curator of content. The old one built a website. The new one built a vibrant community. So YouTube beats Vivo, and Facebook beats Match.com. Wikipedia beats Britannica, and Flickr beats Kodak Gallery, and Blogger beats CNN.com, and Twitter kills the New York Times, and Bleacher Report beats Sporting News. This is a huge change that's underway. It's called self-organization. Now, there are some people who understand this. Barack Obama understood it to change the way you get elected. Did he understand it to change the way you govern? I don't think so, and it cost him. The way I discovered this, so about 3 years ago, someone sent me an email saying, you know, the senator is trying to, from Illinois, he's trying to get the Democratic nomination. He thinks your book, Wikonomics, is the key to winning the presidency and transforming America. Go to myBarackObama.com. So I went there, and there's my book. Right on the screen, it says, we believe in the principles of self-organizing and transparency and the internet in every way possible. We believe in the book by Don Tapscott. And he's saying, I'm asking you not to believe not just in my ability to bring about real change in Washington. I'm asking you to believe in yours. And I looked at this thing. Well, my first reaction was, I am the man. But not so fast. It turns out I'm not the man. See, because I looked around and there was a Wikonomics community, but there's also a young firefighters for Obama community and a single moms who support daycare for Obama community. He created a platform whereby 35,000 communities self-organize, and that's what brought him to power. And that's not just my point of view, it's his. Now, this is a revolutionary force, and I use that word advisedly. You know, people said to me after Iran pulled the plug on Twitter and violently shut down that youth network that, well, that just goes to show you, doesn't it? It says about how social media lacks power and about how young people don't have what it takes. And throughout 2009 and all last year, I've been saying, and some of you may have read my writings, no, this will continue. They can't stop it. The horse is out of the barn. The train has left the station. The cat is out of the bag. I mean, how many ways can we formulate this? This is unstoppable. And it's not about who gets elected in Iran. This is a young people, biggest generation ever, with access to secular information. This is a challenge to the theocracy, which is why I'm enormously hopeful that this is not going to become some kind of fundamentalist revolution. Young people want to be not just subjects, but full participants in society. And you can see this playing out everywhere. So that leads us to the real reason I'm here today to talk to you. Thank you for that patience on that introduction. This is leading to an economic revolution, a change in the architecture of the corporation. Now, in some ways, the media industries, and some of them were way ahead on this. The film, for example, is a giant collaboration. And now, as the internet drops collaboration costs, we've gone from vertically integrated corporations to extended enterprises. That's what I called it a couple of decades ago in a book I wrote called Paradigm Shift. And then the internet, vertically integrated companies began to unbundle further into focused companies that work in networks or business webs. That top thing there is a picture of the Cisco business web from a dozen years ago. Cisco understood this. They succeeded. Their competitors didn't. They fell to the side. And now the web drops transaction and collaboration costs so much that peers can come together and create value. Peers in the sense of within an organization, as opposed to the old hierarchy, people cutting across the old silos. Peers in the sense of companies cooperating as peers rather than supply chains. And peers in the sense of people outside the boundaries of traditional companies being able to create value. Social networking is becoming social production. This is not about hooking up online. We're in the early days of a new mode of production. Think about that. If you can create an encyclopedia with 1 million people, it's 10 times bigger than Britannica. It's in 190 languages, but according to the big study, the quality is roughly the same. What else could you create? Could you create, say, a computer operating system? Well, the Linux operating system, created by peers, owned by no one, is now the dominant operating system in the world for medium and large computers. It knocked Microsoft out of that marketplace. This year will become the dominant operating system for mobile devices. Linux is used to power nuclear power plants, and a month ago, Linux announced a big new customer, Russia. Could you create a physical good? Well, the Chinese motorcycle industry is dozens of little companies. They all cooperate together. They meet on the internet and in tea houses. There's no Harley Davidson. There's no OEM pulling all the strings. This is now the largest motorcycle industry in the world. It's 1/3 of all global motorcycle production. And get ready for the $1,000 car from China using the same model. So this idea that the industrial age would inevitably come to its final conclusion has been around for a long time, but it was waiting for revolutions in technology, in demographics, in society, and in economics. And it was also waiting for a convulsive shock to the system. I don't mean to be cute with the burning platform here, but we now have a burning platform in all of our industries, and I know that you feel that. In the media industry, you can't tinker anymore. This is now a time of very fundamental and profound change. And there will be those that can make these changes that will thrive, and those that can't, that will tend to fall to the side. So let's have a look then at, well, first of all, so we need to rebuild media around 5 new principles. Collaboration as opposed to traditional hierarchies. Openness and transparency. You're going to be naked, so fitness is no longer optional. You got to get buff. Sharing intellectual property, you don't need to own it all. Interdependence and integrity. So I'm going to pick these up and look at 4 industries. The music industry. I'm a musician. I'm actually in a band. It's called Men in Suits. We used to do a concert every year, whether our public demanded it or not. But then we got good. We're actually a charity band. We've raised over $1 million now for good causes. And so I care a lot about this industry, and it breaks my heart to see what's happened to it. Because the internet was the best thing to ever come along to the music industry. But it's collapsing, and the labels are going under, and they're being replaced or having a terrible time, and they're being replaced by all kinds of new intermediaries that are creating new value appropriate for a new networked age.